We're unpacking a massive landmass that just totally defies all logic. It throws the rules of geography completely out the window. You know, when we think of geography, we generally expect some level of consistency. But the place we're exploring today, it completely shatters that expectation.
To kick things off, I want you to really picture this for a second. Imagine a place where an untouched, prehistoric rainforest crashes headfirst into futuristic urban development, mixed in with some incredibly bizarre geopolitical borders. It sounds exactly like the setting of a sci-fi novel, right? But what if I told you an ancient jungle actually hosted a mega city and 3 sovereign nations? Well, welcome to Borneo.
Section 1. Earth's most extreme island.
So let's zoom way out for a second to look at the pure physical footprint of this place. 287,000. That is the square mileage of Borneo, making it a literal mini-continent sitting right in the heart of maritime Southeast Asia. It's totally boxed in by the South China Sea, the Sulu Sea, the Celebes Sea, and the Java Sea. And its sheer scale dictates this highly complex climate, allowing for absolutely wild topography. Everything from sprawling coastal swamps to towering mountain peaks. To really wrap your head around that colossal size, Borneo is the 3rd largest island on the entire planet. It's the biggest island in all of Asia, and globally, it's surpassed only by Greenland and New Guinea. And because of this gigantic scale, it possesses a vast, deep interior that remains incredibly remote and super hard to access even today.
Section 2. 130-million-year-old rainforest.
130 million years. Let that sink in. That is the staggering age of Borneo's primary rainforest. This makes it one of the absolute oldest continuous stretches of primary rainforest on Earth. I mean, it's significantly older than the famous Amazon. And the reason why? Because Borneo sits right on the equator. It basically dodged the devastating climatic shifts of the last ice age. While massive ice sheets were literally scouring other continents, Borneo's forests just kept right on thriving, completely uninterrupted. Now you might be wondering, how on earth did massive mammals get there if it's an island? Well, the concept of Sundaland perfectly explains why Borneo shares creatures like elephants, rhinos, and sun bears with mainland Asia. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, back during the Pleistocene epoch, global sea levels were hundreds of feet lower because so much water was locked up in polar ice caps. So Borneo was actually physically attached to Southeast Asia. The animals literally just walked across the land bridge, right up until the ice melted, the sea levels rose, and boom, the island was isolated.
And once that isolation happened, millions of years of separation birthed an absolute biological crucible. It gave rise to these incredibly unique, highly specialized species that you literally will not find anywhere else on Earth. The undisputed king of the canopy is the Bornean orangutan. We've also got the proboscis monkey, the one with the huge comical nose. There's the critically endangered pygmy elephant, which is the world's smallest elephant subspecies. And then there's the bizarre Rafflesia arnoldi. It's a parasitic plant with no leaves and no true roots that bursts from the jungle floor to become the world's largest single flower. And get this, it emits a putrid stench of rotting meat just to attract flies.
But wait, the extremes don't just happen above ground. Let's descend into a pitch-black subterranean void. Hidden deep beneath the jagged limestone pinnacles of Malaysia's Gunung Mulu National Park is the Sarawak Chamber. It was discovered back in 1981 by British cavers, and it holds the world record as the largest known cave chamber by surface area. Just getting to it requires a grueling, treacherous swim up an underground river, which is exactly why it stays largely untouched, sitting in perpetual darkness. To truly grasp the immense, mind-boggling scale of the Sarawak Chamber, just think about the number 8. Why? Well, because you could literally park exactly 8 Boeing 747 commercial airliners inside of it, in a row. It measures about 2,000 feet long, over 1,400 feet wide, and nearly 380 feet high. This underground room is so unbelievable, you could even fit several full-size replicas of St. Paul's Cathedral inside it. It absolutely defies imagination. Shooting straight back up from those dark caves all the way to the piercing clouds, we hit Mount Kinabalu. Standing at 13,435 feet, it's the undisputed roof of Borneo. But what's really fascinating is its role as a biological island in the sky. As you hike up into the freezing alpine meadows, you pass through ecological zones hosting over 5,000 plant species. And this includes gigantic, carnivorous pitcher plants with traps so big they can hold over 3 liters of water. And yeah, they occasionally consume small vertebrates like frogs. I mean, that is genuinely wild.
Section 3. The Rule of White Rajas.
Okay, so let's track a truly staggering historical journey. First, way back 40,000 years ago,
anatomically modern humans sought shelter in the Naya caves, which we know because the ancient deep skull was unearthed there. Fast forward to the 15th through 17th centuries, and the Bruneian Empire controlled the coastal perimeter as this massive maritime power. But then, look at 1841. An English adventurer named James Brooke literally sails in on his yacht, helps the Sultan of Brunei suppress a rebellion, and gets handed his own sovereign kingdom as a reward. Honestly, not a bad day's work. Brooke and his successors became the White Rajas, ruling Sarawak as their own private kingdom. They minted their own currency and blended European law with indigenous customs for over a century, right up until colonial borders were finally formalized in 1891.
Section 4. 3 Nations, 1 Island. So European diplomats, sitting in drawing rooms thousands of miles away, sliced up this impenetrable jungle into an unprecedented geopolitical anomaly. Because of those decisions, Borneo today is the only island globally administered by 3 distinct sovereign nations. 73% of the landmass belongs to Indonesia in the south, a region known as Kalimantan. 26% makes up East Malaysia up in the north. And then, sitting right on the coast, completely surrounded by Malaysia, is the tiny, incredibly oil-rich Sultanate of Brunei, holding that remaining 1%. The whole setup is a direct legacy of the Anglo-Dutch Treaty of 1824.
Now, that deep geographic isolation we talked about earlier, it didn't just separate the animals. It totally fractured human communication, too. The dense jungles and intense river systems made travel so incredibly difficult that small indigenous communities lived in profound isolation for thousands of years. Because of that, an estimated 170 distinct indigenous languages, along with hundreds of varying dialects, evolved completely independently across the island. It's a linguistic puzzle perfectly shaped by the unforgiving environment.
It's fascinating to look at 2 completely different approaches to surviving here. On one hand, you have the incredible ancestral genius of the indigenous Dayak communities. They built these massive, communal longhouses elevated on wooden pylons, some stretching for hundreds of meters to house 100 families. They adapted perfectly to monsoon floods and lived cooperatively with the rainforest. On the complete opposite end of the spectrum, we have Nusantara, an utterly massive, high-tech, multi-billion-dollar futuristic metropolis that is currently being built from the ground up.
Section 5. Building Nusantara's Future.
But before we look at that shiny new city, it's absolutely vital we connect this distant jungle directly to our everyday lives. You know that instant ramen or the lipstick you might have at home? Well, the global demand for palm oil, which is incredibly versatile and found in all sorts of everyday products, has skyrocketed. And in response, massive swaths of Borneo's ancient rainforest have been logged and totally cleared out to make way for vast, geometric agricultural plantations. While this has certainly driven economic development, it comes at a huge ecological cost. It's entirely transformed the visual fabric of the island and severely threatened the living space of endemic wildlife like the orangutan.
And that brings us to one of the most extreme human-environment interactions happening right now. Indonesia's current capital, Jakarta, is severely overpopulated, gridlocked, and worst of all, rapidly sinking into the Java Sea. So the government is undertaking this absolutely unprecedented mega project. They are literally relocating their entire capital city directly into the ancient forests of East Kalimantan in Borneo. The new city, Nusantara, which actually translates to archipelago in Old Javanese, is envisioned as this sustainable, high-tech forest city, entirely powered by renewable energy. Naturally, a relocation of this magnitude has sparked some intense debate regarding its potential environmental impact, not to mention the displacement of local indigenous communities. So I want to leave you with this provocative question to wrap up our explainer. Can a sustainable, high-tech metropolis truly coexist with the oldest and most fragile rainforest on Earth? The tension between Borneo's 130-million-year-old past and its high-tech future is a high-stakes drama. What happens next on Earth's most complicated island is literally going to impact our entire planet. Thanks so much for learning with me today, and keep exploring.